Hello, this is Andre White, host of Andre White Talks and publisher of the Georgia Sentinel News. Here's what we're talking about today.
Man, it's been a crazy news week, or at least last couple of days, and I've been excited to get into this, but I'm kind of all over the place with it. So I'd like for everyone to bear with me for a second because we have a couple of topics that I think are very interesting, and I've said for some time now, since the election and the whole drama behind the election of Donald Trump, I've said that I wasn't going to be so heavy-handed in some of the politics that we get into talking about because it's just so easy to kind of beat them up on certain things, and yet you run the risk of being more divisive or adding to the divisiveness in the country more so than you ever would have wanted. But we had a couple of things happen this week that really caused me to want to get into it just a little bit. And the reason is because it brought in a couple of people, namely Steve Harvey, radio show personality, comedian, TV show, talk show personality. By all accounts, an all-around nice guy, good guy. People love him. But for one reason or another, he has said, he would say, that at the behest of President Obama, he sought an audience with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump thought to meet with Steve Harvey at Trump Tower, and Donald Trump and or people in his camp has said that they thought it would be good to pair Steve Harvey with Ben Carson in helping to figure out some of the conditions and the plight of urban development, i.e. urban housing, that they plan to put Ben Carson in for. This is very interesting to me. It raises a lot of questions. One would be, the hell does Steve Harvey know about urban development or whatever else? For that matter, Ben Carson. I mean, it was a joke to many of us in the black community, maybe even many people who believe that being a subject matter expert should be part of the qualifications for a job. So if we're going to talk Ben Carson and we're going to say, is he a smart guy? Hey, no doubt. Guy's a neurological surgeon, neurosurgeon, is, has a great history, is, milestones of credibility in his chosen field. But because he is what many in the black community would call a white guy's black guy, and let me define that for those who may wonder what that is. A guy that has the credentials, to start anyway, from institutions that white people respect. That's first and foremost. Secondly, a guy who will push back on traditional black ideals about social and political issues from the mainstream of the black community in which he comes from. These two things are at the cornerstone of a white guy's black guy, so the black community sees it. Whether that's right or wrong, you debate that. But that's what we have in Ben Carson, many in the black community might feel. The guy doesn't necessarily present well in a political environment, subject matter, knowing the subject matter. And this is why I go back to saying the subject matter expert. Because in that position, if we were talking about somebody that was seasoned and steeped in public policy, urban development therein, we'd sit and say, hey, you know what? You know, it's kind of like I said about George W. Bush. I may not have agreed with his politics, but I never once felt that he didn't know the job. And so, you know, George W. Bush was palatable for me for that reason. I never once thought he did not know the job. And maybe he knew the job for some of us too well because he knew how to play the game such that he could get things done that we might not have agreed with, you know, i.e. start a war. But for Ben Carson to be in this position at the behest of a Donald Trump, and we can go through a laundry list of things that he has said, things that he's represented that many of us might consider divisive. But then to throw Steve Harvey in there and for Steve Harvey to accept, some in the black community might find this dumb, egotistical, or just being a pawn in the game. Because at the end of the day, I would sit and say that Steve Harvey might have taken this for every bit of the photo op that Donald Trump took it for. Because at the end of the day, nobody really looks at Steve Harvey more than a radio personality. Nobody's going to take him as someone that the black community goes to for their political direction. And the fact that a Donald Trump thought that that might be a good idea, well, I'll just have to say, you know, we've seen Kanye West trounce himself up to the Trump Tower. We know that Omarosa is in his camp, and the posturing of it all. Come to Trump Tower, meet with me, kiss my ring, bow down, as it were. I don't remember an instance where Trump had white people of a particular status, consideration for a job or otherwise, meet with him at Trump Tower and then go out in the lobby for a photo op and explain why this was good or necessary. I may be wrong. I may be missing one. But to me, Steve Harvey looked like a pawn in a game that he did not realize he was a pawn in. I want to, well, first of all, I want to say that this even gives pause and force many of us to have some questions about why is it that we consistently have entertainers and or athletes speaking for us in all matters, particularly entertainment. Once upon a time, during let's say the throes of the civil rights movement, 50s and the 60s, some of the only black prominent faces that could have an audience with white people in power, some of the black faces that were palatable enough for some white audiences to engage and listen to were athletes and entertainers. And so there was a time when that may have been the only end, an opportunity for this community to have a representative at certain seats and engage in certain conversations. But that's not now. And certainly Steve Harvey is not that guy. And he's caught a lot of flack. And, maybe one day he'll talk in more detail about why he thought that was a good idea and what he hopes to have come out of it. But for what we know right now, you went and had a meeting, and the best you can say is he's a good guy. He's a reasonable guy. We had a good conversation. You didn't go in with a particular agenda that you could articulate and sell the rest of us on that have supported you, that follow you, that want to believe that there's somebody acting in our best interest, who has the ear of the president-elect, who has been very divisive, and that is the view of many people that happen to be black or brown in this country, because less than 10% of black people in America voted for Donald Trump. And so there's some work for him to do. And so to engage someone like a Steve Harvey, Kanye West, Omarosa, Jim Brown, Ray Lewis, as people that might give him some insight as to how best to deal with the black community. I mean, some could say that Donald Trump has had nothing but disdain and antipathy for the black community and its leadership. And so, if that's not the case, there's nothing that would suggest otherwise by who you've chosen to engage from the black community to be an emissary or a go-between or, a peacemaker for the hurdles that you have in the black community. As entertainment and athlete personalities go, there's one here in Atlanta, a rapper of all people by the name of T.I., that had some very interesting things to say in his analyzation of this meeting of Steve Harvey and Trump and his comments on Steve Harvey meeting with President Trump.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Man, happy King Day to you. Man, I'm just getting up and I'm seeing all this stuff on TV, man. Look, I'm going to tell all you celebrities, black, minority, all of you, man, athletes, man, all of you, look, let me tell you something. There's a strategic plan that people are trying to make you a part of, okay? So do not accept any invitation to have any meeting, no matter how positive you think the outcome may be. Without understanding, man, people have a very Willie Lynch agenda, okay? And you being there, being seen with them, taking pictures and smiling and being positive, it may seem positive to you, but there's a hidden agenda, man. And you might not know it, but now you have been warned. Do not go in there unless you have a strategy or you with John Lewis or somebody who can represent us. Okay, man, so let me be specific with you, man. I'm explaining to you in great detail. All right, step by step. I seen all these people over the weekend going back and forth in and out there, man, officers. If you want to take a picture, then cool, that's what you do. But let me show you exactly where they coming from, okay? They seen how adamantly against him being president, the hip-hop community and the young black people was in America. So what do? They get Kanye West to come in. Well, he's their representative. They listen to his music, they buy his shoes, they go see him in concert. Well, surely if we take a picture with him and he smiles and says he's cool with it, they'll fall right in line. Okay, and also, you got black women, they were against it. Well, who speaks to the black women? Steve Harvey. Let's get him in here. He'll take a picture, he'll smile, he'll say it's cool, they'll fall right in line. Who else? They love football. Let's get Ray Lewis. Let's get Jim Brown. They were the heroes. Surely if they say they cool with it. And also on the week when you going back and forth with Martin Luther King, homeboy, one of the most prolific civil rights activists of our times, you gonna get Martin Luther King's son or Martin Luther King Day to come in there and meet with you. And y'all gotta see this, man. Divide and conquer.
Atlanta rapper T.I. on his take on Steve Harvey meeting with President Trump, President-elect Trump. And probably more disturbing than that was Martin Luther King III meeting with Trump on the day that the nation is celebrating. And I want everyone to take that in for a bit, because while Dr. King, as Bernice King said, was nonpartisan and met with every president, negotiation is necessary. Leverage is something you have to have. And when you negotiate and when you hope to exert some leverage, you have to represent a power base. You have to be someone of credibility, and in this case, with the black community. Sad to say, I don't know that Martin Luther King III has the credibility and can exert the leverage that some would say is necessary to have a meeting that, in the eyes of the black community, is as tenuous with President-elect as it appears to be, and come away with something that some of us would sit and say, that was reasonable. That was worthwhile. That was something we needed and can use. But for Steve Harvey and Martin Luther King III to meet with Donald Trump and come away with apparently nothing is something we just have to continue to talk about, analyze, and explore, and we'll come back to at a later time.